My own son looked right through me like I was a ghost. There he was, my David, standing not 50 feet away in the park with his wife Isabella and my sweet grandson, Sam. They were right by the swings where I was supposed to meet them for our Tuesday picnic. Sam saw me first, his little face lit up. "Grandma!" he shouted, starting to run. But Isabella, she put a hand on his shoulder and steered him away, fast, whispering something in his ear. She didn't even glance my way. "Friend, before I go on, let me ask you, would you do me a kindness? Tap subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It helps me see just how far my story reaches. It was the 3rd time this month. The shame felt hot on my cheeks. Other mothers at the playground looked at me, then looked away, pretending they hadn't seen. I just stood there, holding my wicker basket with Sam's favourite sugar cookies inside. I felt like there was a thick wall of glass between us. I could see them, my family, but I couldn't reach them. They were laughing now, pushing Sam on the swing, acting like I didn't exist. A terrible, cold feeling started in my stomach. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. They were pushing me out on purpose. But why? I went home that afternoon, the cookies uneaten on my kitchen counter. My heart hurt too much to eat. I had to know what was wrong, so I picked up the phone to call my son David. My hand was shaking so badly I could hardly dial. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice clipped and distant. "Mom, now's not a good time," he said, like I was some stranger calling to sell him something. Before I could even ask about the park, I heard rustling, and then Isabella's voice was on the line, dripping with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Eleanor! So sorry about today," she chirped. "Sam's just got a little tummy bug, you see." I clutched the phone tighter. A tummy bug? He looked perfectly fine on the swings. She kept going. "He's been very sensitive to strangers lately." The word hung in the air between us. Strangers. A needle couldn't have been sharper. Me, his grandma, a stranger? The static on the line felt like the growing distance between us. They weren't just avoiding me. They were building a wall with their words, brick by brick, and I had no idea why. A week went by with nothing but silence. To keep my mind busy, I started cleaning out the office that belonged to my late husband, Arthur. It still smelled like him, old books and peppermint. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light as I sorted through his filing cabinet. That's when I saw it, a recent bank statement, tucked inside a folder for household repairs. My breath caught in my throat. There was a withdrawal for $10,000, money I knew nothing about. Arthur and I had saved that money for emergencies. I traced the line with my finger. It wasn't a check I'd written. The money had been transferred to a holding company with a name I didn't recognize. I sat down hard in Arthur's old leather chair, the paper trembling in my hand. My mind started racing, trying to put the pieces together. David and Isabella avoiding me. Isabella's cutting words. And now, a huge chunk of my savings was just gone. The date on the bank statement was from the day after David mentioned they were having money trouble. Was it just a coincidence? Or was this the key to everything? My heart ached with a need to see my grandson, Sam. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. So I bought him a little red toy truck, his favourite kind, and drove over to their house, unannounced. Just as I pulled up, I saw him, a flash of yellow in a blue jacket, playing on the front lawn. His face broke into the purest, most wonderful smile when he saw me. "Nana!" he cried, his little legs pumping as he ran toward my car. My soul just soared. But then the front door opened, and my daughter-in-law Isabella stepped out. She didn't yell. She just moved fast, intercepting Sam before he could reach me. She bent down and whispered something right in his ear, her hand on his back. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw what they did. Sam's beautiful smile vanished. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a confusion that looked an awful lot like fear. He turned and hid behind Isabella's legs, peeking out at me like I was a monster. What in God's name did she say to a 5-year-old boy to make him scared of his own grandmother? Seeing that fear in Sam's eyes broke something inside me. That night, I drove back to their house. I walked right up to the door and knocked until my son David opened it. Isabella stood behind him. "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling with hurt. "Why is Sam afraid of me?" Isabella stepped forward, her face a perfect mask of sweet concern. "Oh, Eleanor," she said softly, putting a hand on my arm. "You've been so forgetful since Arthur passed. You know you missed his birthday party last week. You keep showing up unannounced. It's confusing for a little boy." My mind reeled. I hadn't missed his birthday, I'd mailed his gift myself. But her words made me hesitate. David looked at me with worried eyes. "Mom, she's right. You seem off. Please just call before you visit, okay?" He sided with her. They stood there together, a united front against me. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I walked away feeling dizzy and small, the world tilting on its side. Were they just pushing me away, or were they trying to make me think I was losing my mind? The next morning, my confusion had hardened into anger. I remembered the bank statement. That wasn't confusion, that was a fact. I marched back to their house, my proof clutched in my hand. I didn't knock. I walked right in and slapped the paper down on their kitchen table. "Explain this," I demanded. "This $10,000. Isabella didn't even flinch. She picked it up and smiled patiently, like I was a child. "Oh, that was the deposit for the new sunroom addition for your house. We told you all about it, remember? To give you more light." "A sunroom?" I stared at her, speechless. She opened a drawer and pulled out another document. "You even signed the paperwork for it," she said, sliding it in front of me. And there it was, a signature at the bottom of a contract. It looked just like my handwriting, exactly like it. But I had absolutely no memory of seeing that paper, of having that talk, of signing my name. I looked at their calm faces and then back at the signature. Had my mind truly betrayed me? Or was I looking at the faces of two very clever thieves? I felt so alone, like I was shouting in an empty room. I needed someone, just one person to believe me. So I called my sister, Beatrice. We've always been close, ever since we were little girls sharing a room. My hands trembled as I told her everything. About my grandson Sam being scared of me, about the $10,000, about the strange paperwork. "B, something is terribly wrong with Isabella," I whispered into the phone. I waited for her to get angry for me, to say she'd be right over. Instead, there was a long, heavy silence on the line. Then she said, her voice so careful it scared me, "Ellie, are you eating enough? Maybe the grief from losing Arthur is just making you a little paranoid. David called me, you know. He's worried sick about you." My heart sank like a stone in a pond. David called her. Of course. And Isabella was right there, whispering in his ear. She had gotten to my own sister first. She had poisoned the well before I even knew I was thirsty. Who else had she turned against me with her sweet-sounding lies? I soon found out just how deep the poison went. A few days later, my sister Beatrice called back, her voice thick with pity. "Ellie, I have to tell you something," she started. "Isabella called a family meeting last night. A meeting about me that I wasn't invited to. Beatrice told me how my daughter-in-law, Isabella, had stood in the living room, tears streaming down her face, with my son David's arm around her. She told the whole family a story. She said I'd been getting lost on my way home from the grocery store. She said I had accused her of stealing my jewellery. And then, the worst part, she told them I was stalking my own grandson, Sam, at the park. She wasn't just defending herself against my accusations, she had twisted everything around. She had launched a preemptive strike, painting a picture of me as a confused, paranoid old woman who was falling apart. She made it seem like her cruelty was actually her being concerned. How could I ever fight back when she had already convinced everyone that I was the one who was crazy? After that meeting, the walls of my world closed in. Every phone call from a relative was filled with that same cautious, pitying tone. When I tried to explain what was really happening, they would say things like, "Now, Eleanor, don't get yourself worked up." My truths were treated like ramblings. My anger was seen as a symptom. The next Sunday, David and Isabella came to my house. "Mum," David said, his eyes full of a sorrow that felt fake, "we can't let you go on like this." I started to argue to defend myself, but he just shook his head sadly. "This is exactly what we mean. You're just not yourself anymore." Then came the final blow. He sat down across from me. "For your own safety, Isabella will be managing your finances from now on. We found the papers. Dad set up a power of attorney for her to use years ago, in case you ever needed help. They were using my Arthur's love, his desire to protect me, as a weapon to lock me in a cage. They had taken everything. What was I supposed to do now? The world felt grey and muffled, like I was living underwater. I drove the long way home from the grocery store, past the park where I used to meet my grandson, Sam. I saw another woman there, with silver hair like mine, pushing a little boy on the swings. He was laughing, his head thrown back. The ache in my chest was so sharp I had to pull the car over. That used to be my life. That was my boy. Now, nothing. My house is silent. The phone never rings. Not my sister, not my cousins, not even my son, David. They all call Isabella now to check in on me. They have bought her story completely. Every last poisonous word. I am the confused old woman. I am the burden. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, at the tired eyes staring back. The fight wasn't about seeing Sam anymore. Not really. It was about saving the woman in the mirror. They had stripped me of my family and my memories, and if I didn't do something, there would be nothing left of me at all. How do you save yourself when you're the only one who knows you're in danger? I decided my first stop had to be the bank. I walked in, my hands trembling, to try and fight the power of attorney my daughter-in-law Isabella was now using. The teller looked at me with pity. I was getting nowhere. As I turned to leave, a woman with a kind face and sharp eyes stopped me. "Eleanor Gable? It's Martha. I was the manager here for years. I knew your Arthur." It was like a light switched on in a dark room. I must have looked as broken as I felt, because she led me to a quiet corner. "They've taken everything, Martha," I whispered. "My son David, he thinks I'm confused." Martha nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving mine. "I always thought that Isabella was too slick, too smooth," she said quietly. "Listen to me. They think you're weak, so don't show your cards. I'm retired, but I still have friends on the inside. Let me make a quiet phone call. Let me see what I can find." A stranger, a friend of my late husband's. She was the first person in months who saw me, not my diagnosis. Martha's words put a little steel back in my spine. "Look for Arthur's personal records," she had advised me. "Bank statements are one thing. What a man writes down for himself is another." That night, her words echoed in my head. I suddenly remembered it. A heavy locked file cabinet my husband Arthur kept in the back of the attic, behind the Christmas decorations. I found the key in his old cigar box. The air upstairs was dusty and still. I turned the key and the drawer creaked open. Inside, beneath old tax returns, were 3 leather-bound journals. His journals. I took them downstairs and opened the last one. His familiar, strong handwriting filled the pages. As I read the final entries from the months before he passed, a chill went through me. He wrote, "Isabella's ambition is concerning." A week later, another entry. "Her interest in the details of my estate is unusual, probing." Oh, Arthur. He saw it. He saw the darkness in her taking root long before I ever did. The proof wasn't a number on a page, it was a warning from the grave. My kitchen table, once a place of lonely tea and toast, was now my headquarters. Martha, my new friend from the bank, was a force of nature. She worked quietly, using the connections she'd built over 30 years. A few days after we first spoke, she called me, her voice grim. "Eleanor, I got them," she said. "The full bank records, the ones they wouldn't show you. It's worse than we thought." She emailed the statements to me and I printed them out. My hands shook as I laid the papers out, but this time it was with a cold fire, not fear. It wasn't just the one $10,000 withdrawal, it was a pattern. $500 here, $1,000 there, another $200. A slow, steady drain over the last 8 months, all funneled into that same mysterious holding company. It was a calculated financial assault, happening right under my nose while they smiled at my face and told everyone I was losing my mind. This wasn't a mistake or a one-time temptation. This was a long, patient and evil plan to bleed me dry. That holding company was the key, and my friend Martha wouldn't let it go. She told me she had a friend who could look into business registrations. 2 days later, she called again, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. "I found the director of the company, Eleanor," she said. "He's a man with a history of fraud, in and out of trouble with the law. His name is Marco Rossi." The name didn't mean anything to me at first. I searched my brain, going through old Christmas cards and family picnics. Rossi. And then it hit me like a physical blow. "My daughter-in-law, Isabella," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Her maiden name was Rossi. She has a brother she never ever talks about. A black sheep. His name is Marco." The puzzle pieces clicked into place with a horrible final sound. This was never about a sunroom or needing a little help. This was a coordinated heist run by Isabella and her criminal brother to liquidate everything my Arthur and I had worked our entire lives for. It was pure, simple greed. The lawyer Martha sent me to was a woman named Ms. Albright. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me like a soldier. After reviewing Arthur's journals and the bank statements, she laid out a plan. "We start quietly," she said, her voice firm. "We make a move they won't expect from a confused woman." The first step was small, but powerful. We went to my investment firm, and I signed a document to freeze my main account. No money could go in or out without me being there, in person, with photo ID. The lawyer explained what would happen next. "An automated security alert is now being sent to all managers on the account," she said, looking right at me. "Including your daughter-in-law, Isabella." I went home and sat in my quiet living room picturing it. Somewhere across town on her phone or her laptop, a message had just appeared. A digital shot across the bow. It was a clear signal that the game had changed. The confused old woman she had invented was gone. Eleanor Gable was fighting back. The peace from fighting back lasted less than 2 days. My daughter-in-law, Isabella, didn't just get the message. She declared all-out war. A man in a cheap suit served me with a thick envelope of legal papers. I called my lawyer, Ms. Albright, and read the words to her. Her voice was steady but serious. "She's retaliating, Eleanor. It's a petition for an emergency conservatorship." The words sounded big and scary. Ms. Albright explained it in simple terms. Isabella was asking a judge to give her legal control over my entire life, my home, my health decisions, every last penny, by claiming I was a danger to myself. And what was her proof? Her prime example of my erratic and self-destructive behaviour was the very account I had frozen to protect myself from her. She was twisting my shield into a sword to use against me. The court date was set for 2 weeks away. It was no longer just about proving she was a thief in a lawyer's office. Now I had to stand up in a courtroom and prove to a stranger that I was still sane. Isabella didn't just fight me on paper, she took her battle to the front lawns of our neighbourhood. She began a theatre of sadness for everyone to see. I saw her talking to Carol from next door, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The next day, Carol, who used to bring me rose clippings, just gave me a quick, sad wave and hurried inside. I heard whispers when I went to the mailbox. "Isabella is just a saint for what she's putting up with," one neighbour said to another. "She told me Eleanor's illness has taken a nasty turn." She was playing the role of the worried, loving daughter-in-law, burdened by a mother-in-law who was losing her mind. People I'd known for 20 years now looked at me with pity. The neighbourhood watch group, the one my Arthur helped start, was now watching me. I was the poor, confused woman they had to keep an eye on. Isabella had successfully turned my own community into a fishbowl, and I was the specimen trapped inside, my every move judged. The knock on my door was firm and official. I opened it to a calm-faced man holding a badge. "Mrs. Gable, my name is Mr. Adebayo. I'm an investigator with Adult Protective Services. May I come in?" My heart leaped for a second. Finally, help. But my hope died the moment he sat on my sofa. He placed a thick folder on my coffee table. It was Isabella's name on the tab. He had her meticulously crafted file of evidence against me. His questions were gentle, but they all came from her story. "Ma'am, your daughter-in-law is very concerned," he began. "She says you've been having trouble remembering things. Can you tell me in your own words why you felt the need to freeze your financial accounts?" He wasn't there to investigate the theft. He wasn't there to help me. He had been sent because of the conservatorship filing. He was here to investigate me. He had already decided who the victim was, and it wasn't the old woman sitting right in front of him. When Mr. Adebayo, the investigator, asked his questions, I saw the story he had been fed. He was expecting tears, confusion, maybe even anger. I gave him none of that. I took a deep breath and met his gaze. "Mr. Adebayo," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. "May I show you my own file?" I had a folder ready on the coffee table. I laid out the bank statements with the withdrawals circled in red. I showed him the paper with the name of the holding company and its director, Isabella's criminal brother. I pushed my late husband Arthur's journal across the table, open to the page where he worried about her ambition. "My daughter-in-law, Isabella, says I am a confused old woman," I said calmly. "But would a confused woman have been able to uncover all of this?" I watched his face. He was a professional. He didn't let much show. But I saw it. Just a flicker of doubt in his eyes as he looked from my organised papers to the file Isabella had given him. The two stories didn't match. He was required by law to investigate any claim of financial exploitation. I had just given him one. While I planted seeds of doubt with the investigator, my friend Martha was chopping down the whole tree. She had been digging into that power of attorney document, the one they said my Arthur had signed. She called me, and her voice was electric. "Eleanor, I got a clear copy of it and I sent it to a friend who knows about these things," she said, talking fast. "He checked the notary stamp. That's the official seal that makes it legal." I held my breath. "The notary business listed on that document," Martha said, her voice dropping for effect, "went out of business 5 years before the date on the signature line." I nearly dropped the phone. It was a fake. Not just a lie, not a misunderstanding, but a forgery, a felony, a serious crime. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was followed by a sharp, sudden sadness. We had her. We could prove how she stole the money. But this piece of paper, this smoking gun, it didn't explain the deepest wound. It didn't explain the cruelty, and it wouldn't be enough to win back the heart of my son, David. Perhaps Isabella sensed the walls were closing in, because her next move was bold and terrifying. A thick, creamy invitation arrived in my mailbox. The letters were in a fancy flowing script. My daughter-in-law was cordially inviting me to a family reconciliation dinner at her home. The date was set for 2 days before the conservatorship hearing. "A chance for our family to heal," the invitation read, "and for Eleanor to find peace before the difficult court proceedings." It sounded so lovely, didn't it? But I knew exactly what it was. It was a threat wrapped in a pretty bow. A summons disguised as an olive branch. She was telling me and the rest of the family that I had one last chance. Come to dinner, apologise for all the trouble I'd caused, accept their story, and maybe, just maybe, they'd be merciful. It was a velvet-gloved command to fall in line or be publicly and legally cast out of the family for good. The clock was ticking, and the choice was mine. I took the silky invitation to my lawyer, Ms. Albright. She held it by the edges as if it were coated in poison. "This isn't a dinner, Eleanor," she said, her eyes hard. "This is a stage, and Isabella has written a play where you are the villain who begs for forgiveness." She laid out the trap so clearly it made me shiver. The entire family would be there, a jury of people who already believed I was losing my mind. "In front of everyone," Ms. Albright explained, "Isabella will offer you a deal. She will be gracious and kind. She'll offer you visitation rights with your grandson, Sam." My breath caught in my throat. "Sam," she continued, "in exchange, you will sign a simple settlement, an agreement to the conservatorship to keep you safe. If you sign, you hand her irreversible control of everything Arthur left you. If you refuse, you look like a monster who is choosing anger over her own grandson." She was going to use my love for that little boy as a weapon, holding him hostage in a room full of smiling faces. It was the perfect, cruelest trap. That night, sleep was impossible. The dinner was in 2 days, and I felt the walls closing in. I went into my husband's old study and opened his journals again. My last hope. I desperately scanned the pages, searching for a word, a hint, anything I might have missed. And then I saw it. A small, hurried note near the back, in a section about his investments. "Her first husband. Nevada. Check the cloud." The words made no sense. The cloud. Like in the sky. It sounded like nonsense, the ramblings of a tired man. But Arthur was never a rambler. I called my friend Martha early the next morning, my voice shaking with a strange new hope. "Martha, Arthur had one of those online storage accounts," I said. "A cloud. He left a note. We have to get into it." I didn't know what I was looking for, but my dear Arthur had left me one final message, a breadcrumb from beyond the grave. What secret did he think was so important that he had to hide it in the sky? It took Martha, my angel from the bank, nearly an hour to guess Arthur's password. Finally, a screen popped up with a list of folders. One was labelled IR Contingency, Isabella Rossi. My hand trembled as I clicked it open. Inside were scanned copies of legal documents, not from my life but from hers. It was a prenuptial agreement between Isabella and her first husband, a wealthy man in Nevada. I read the single, brutal clause. If either party was unfaithful, they would forfeit all claim to any assets. They would leave the marriage with nothing. Behind that document was another folder. Inside, Arthur had saved copies of emails and hotel receipts. Proof. Proof that Isabella had cheated and that she had been caught. The whole story clicked into place with a sickening thud. She didn't leave her first marriage. She was thrown out with nothing. She came to my son, David, a complete financial failure. Her entire life with my family, her sweet nature, her loving care, it was all an act. It was one long, desperate plan to secure the fortune she had already lost once. At the very bottom of the folder my husband Arthur had labelled contingency, there was one last file. It wasn't a document, it was a video. My hand shook as I clicked it open. And then he was there, my Arthur, on the screen. He looked so tired, thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were clear and strong. The video had been filmed on his laptop just a month before he died. He spoke directly to the camera, as if it were our son. "David," he said, his voice raspy. "If you're seeing this, it means I'm gone, and I was right to be worried. I've discovered things about Isabella. The power of attorney she has is a fake." He held up the forgery, then a real document next to it, pointing to the signature. "She is trying to cut your mother out, son. She will tell you anything to isolate you. Trust your mother. She is the only one who has never lied to you." Tears streamed down my face. He was still protecting me. I saved the video to my tablet, put on my best dress and left for the dinner. I was no longer walking to a surrender. I was going to war, with my husband's ghost by my side. Walking into my son David's house felt like entering a trap. The air was thick with a sweet, suffocating tension. The whole family was there, my sister Beatrice, my cousins, all of them looking at me with gentle pity in their eyes. They thought they were witnessing a sad, final chapter. My son couldn't meet my gaze. He just stared at his dinner plate, his shoulders slumped, a prisoner in his own home. At the head of the table, my daughter-in-law, Isabella, glowed. She raised her wine glass, her smile as bright and hard as a diamond. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her voice ringing with false warmth. "To family, to forgiveness, and to new beginnings." A murmur of agreement went around the table, and then all eyes turned to me. They were all waiting for the poor, confused old woman to break down, to apologize, to finally give in. But I didn't cry. I just took a quiet sip of water and held the weight of the tablet in my purse. The show was starting, but they had no idea I had rewritten the ending. After the dessert plates were cleared away, Isabella's performance reached its grand finale. The sweet, concerned daughter-in-law vanished, and a woman of business took her place. She slid a sleek leather portfolio across the polished dining table. It stopped directly in front of me. "Just a few formalities, Eleanor," she said, her voice like honey. "Just a few signatures to put all this ugliness behind us." She paused, letting her next words land with perfect aim. "So we can be a family again, and so you can see Sam." There it was, the knife she always used. My grandson. She opened the portfolio to reveal a stack of papers and a fancy pen. Her voice was smooth, but her eyes were chips of cold, hard steel. "You just sign here at the bottom of each page," she instructed. All the talking was over. The trap was sprung. She pushed the pen toward my waiting hand, but I didn't reach for her pen. I reached for my purse. I didn't reach for Isabella's pen. I pushed my chair back and the sound scraped loudly in the quiet room. I stood up. Everyone stared at me. "Before I sign anything," I said, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I had, "there's someone else who wants to speak to the family. My husband Arthur left a message." I walked from the dining table into the living room where the big television was. I took out my tablet and with a few simple taps connected it. The screen flickered to life. And then his face filled the screen. My Arthur. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It was dead silent as his voice, his words filled the space, an echo from the grave speaking the truth. I didn't watch the screen. I watched them. I saw my son David's face crumble, his eyes filling with a grief so deep it was mixed with dawning horror. And I saw Isabella's perfect composure, her mask of sweet concern, shatter into pure, unveiled panic. The ghost was in the room, and he was pointing his finger right at her. The moment the video of my Arthur ended, the room exploded. David shot up from his chair, his eyes, so full of confusion for so long, were now blazing with clarity and rage. He stared at his wife. "You did this?" he choked out, his voice cracking with disbelief. "You were forging his name while he was dying?" Suddenly, everyone was shouting. The spell was broken. My sister Beatrice, the cousins, they all saw the truth now. They saw the ugly, greedy heart behind Isabella's sweet smile. She stood up, her face pale and twisted, and for a second I thought she would run, but there was nowhere to go. The truth, delivered by the man she thought was gone forever, had destroyed her. In the middle of the chaos, David stumbled toward me. He wrapped me in his arms, his body shaking with sobs as he buried his face in my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mum," he cried over and over again. "Oh, Mum, I'm so sorry." I just held my boy, my son, who had been lost for so long. The war was over. The truth had finally come home. 6 months later, my kitchen smells like yeast and cinnamon again. My grandson, a happy laughing Sam, stands on his little stool, his hands covered in flour. "Like this, Grandma?" he asks, poking the soft bread dough. I smile and nod. My son David leans against the doorframe, watching us. He looks weary, but he also looks free. The divorce from Isabella is a bitter and ugly legal battle, but he is here. He is present. We are slowly, carefully, rebuilding our family. I walked out to get the mail, and among the usual bills there was a thick envelope from the county coroner's office. My heart beat a little faster as I opened it. The letter stated that following an anonymous tip, they were officially reopening the investigation into the sudden nature of my Arthur's heart attack. My dear friend Martha had made one last phone call. The battle was won, but as I held that letter, a new cold question began to form. Did Isabella just steal from my husband, or did she steal him from me forever?